As the title suggests, today I'll be nailing your grandma's recipes. It's a great way for us to explore home cooking from all over the world. Let's jump straight into it. Our first recipe is called Pogaca, sent to us by Esser. It's a baked, leavened, cheese-filled bread from the Balkan area. Starting with 11 grams of fresh yeast. I'm using dry yeast, but you can use fresh yeast from your shoes. 10 grams of sugar, half a tablespoon of salt, and 50 grams of flour. Mix them together with 250 milliliters of milk that I got all by myself, and 50 grams of oil. I just realized the metric system is kinda easy to use. After we mix it together with a Ligma fork, we'll cover and rest for 15 for the yeast to bloom. Our next step is the filling. Esser uses goat cheese and Gouda, but I'm gonna use my never-ending raclette. This wheel is less stinky than the French one, but smells more similar to feet, which turns me on. Woo! Add in 470 grams of flour and knead for 10 minutes with the KitchenAid. I'm starting to suspect that Esser doesn't watch my videos. But anyways, as always, we'll mix it together with a Ligma fork and then knead it with our organic stand mixer for 10 minutes. Once it comes together, we'll cover it with plastic wrap and let it rest for another 2 hours. Now comes the exciting part. We'll pinch off a couple pieces, flatten it down, and fill it with the never-ending raclette. And close it just by pulling and pinching the dough while pushing the cheese inside. And since Esser didn't specify the shape, I'm just gonna assume it's a ball. Once the patties are sealed up, we'll put it on a sheet pan with parchment paper. Again, cover it and rest it for 30 minutes. Last step, brush it on with egg wash, and just as a decoration, we'll grate some Parmesan on top. Into the oven at 350 for 25 minutes, or till the top is golden brown. Seems like 2 of them became lactose intolerant in the oven. We'll let them cool down a little bit and taste the pretty one. The color looks good, and I really like how the Parmesan on top got browned and baked into the bread. I wonder if Esser will approve this. So I sent a picture back and he responded with further instructions that he never gave me. Apparently my temperature's too low and it's supposed to be sesame seeds on top. I also need to mix black cumin seeds into the dough.
Why didn't you tell me?
But I'm glad I got everything now, so next time I make it, I'll get it right. I did try my best here, and Esser said it looks really good. So let's hope we can get a proper cheese pull. I'm starting to think that the day will never come. Let's give this Pogaca a taste and rate it 1 through 10. The flavors are very balanced and subtle. Soft bread with a cheesy filling. I don't think it's supposed to be a main dish, but it's perfect for a side dish, to eat it with some lamb or something. 8.7 out of 10. I loved it. Thank you, Esser. Our next recipe is from Mrs. Flower Pot. Does that mean she smokes weed? It's a traditional German potato salad that's usually served on the 24th of December. She said it's paired with Wiener sausage, but doesn't Wiener mean sausage? So we heated 1 kg of potatoes in salted cold water, now chopping 75 grams of cornichons. I'm also boiling some eggs off camera. So step 1 is boiling potatoes and step 2 is cooling them down. And that's all the instructions she gave me. You know, I thought the stereotype for Germans is that they're thorough with things. If we only have one instruction, we're gonna follow it perfectly. All we need to do is to not turn it into mashed potatoes. Finally, half a cup of I Give a Second Chance to QP mayo. Mix everything with the Ligma fork, just like how grandma does it. And let's send it to Mrs. Flower Pot to see if she approves. Well, she hearted it, so that's a good sign. Then she told me the important information that she couldn't send the rest of the recipe because my DMs is limited. So the problem is me. She said it doesn't look radioactive and she would eat it. She might change her mind after see the process of making it. So let's give it a taste and rate it 1 through 10. It's so simple, it only has like 3 ingredients, but it's so good. The acidity from the pickles and the fattiness of the mayo is perfectly combined by the potatoes, and the eggs add a satisfying element to it. Definitely feels like something a grandma would make. I'll give this an 8.5 out of 10. Just like me, it's calling for a sausage. But it's okay though, we're moving on to some balls. As you guys know, I'm appreciative of meatballs from all cultures. Hazem sent us his grandma's Egyptian kebab recipe, but not the kebab we're thinking about. To be honest, I'm a little concerned by the amount of vegetables listed on here, but we gotta make it before we judge it. Here we have half a bell pepper, half an onion, dill, parsley, and garlic. Put everything in a food processor and blend them into a paste. Now we'll mix the vegetable paste with radioactive ground beef. The recipe also calls for cooked rice to bind everything together. I don't have that, so I'm using breadcrumbs. Carbs is carbs. This time it's definitely not my fault that the meat is green. Now to cook them, I'm using my evil non-stick but actually sticks pan. It failed me so many times, so I'm using a lot of oil. We'll sear it first to give it some color, about 3 minutes, turning it every minute or so. Now when the pan gets really ugly, we'll pour in the tomato puree. It's gonna act like my sister when I criticize her. We'll just scrape around with a wooden spoon to get the fond off. Leave it to simmer for 20 minutes. Hazem think it looks amazing, but the balls are too big. Well, that's never a problem for me. And as I'm instructed, no bread or rice, just straight up balls. Among all the meatballs I've experienced in my life, never quite like this. Usually meatballs are very dense and meaty, but this is surprisingly vegetal and light. My only complaint would be the crumbly texture, but that's just cause I used breadcrumbs instead of rice. I'll definitely make it again with the right ingredients, but my execution today will be a 7 out of 10. I'm really intrigued by this recipe because it looks super complicated. You'll see in a sec. From Camilla's grandma, it's called chicken roll. It has 14 ingredients, so you already know I'm gonna substitute a lot. Chicken breast, ground beef, ground pork, bacon, and ham. Definitely no vegan in this family. So besides these vegetables, I'm also using some radioactive chicken breast, off-colored ground beef, and off-colored bacon. It was this dark when I bought it. In a medium saucepan, we'll saute some finely diced onions and carrots. Once they develop some color, we'll add in half an apple and 4 cloves of garlic. In the recipe, she keeps talking about an ingredient called MSG liquid. I don't know what that is, so I'm just gonna use regular MSG. Now we'll add the ground beef and continuously poke it a lot so they separate. Season with pepper, onion powder, and paprika. Maybe chill on the salt since we added too much MSG. When everything's pretty much caramelized, we'll deglaze with a little bit of red wine. It's gonna add a fruity acidity to it. When the wine's reduced, we're pretty much done. You want it to be not liquidy, but also not dry either. We'll set it aside for now because we got more meat coming. So taking one of the radioactive chicken breasts, we'll butterfly it down the middle so it's bigger and thinner. Make sure you keep the 2 sides even because we're wrapping stuff in it. Now put a plastic wrap on top and beat the meat. You can beat it with whatever you're comfortable with, but I'm just gonna beat it with my fist like usual. Now we're ready for the assembly process. First is to lay down plastic wrap on the kitchen counter. The outer layer is gonna be bacon. Make sure you align them side by side. What I'm about to do is so weird, so I'm gonna give you proof in case you guys accuse me of making stuff up. On top of the bacon, we'll lay down the chicken breast and a layer of ham and cheese, and scoop in a decent amount of the ground beef / apple mixture. If you look closely, the ground beef is steaming on top of the raw, cold chicken breast. I feel like I might get cancelled for this in 10 years by vegetarians. Now it comes the part where it requires some burrito skill. We'll lift up the bottom of the plastic wrap while pinching in the filling and rolling at the same time. Squeeze down the middle to make sure they're even. Don't worry about the filling falling off the sides for now. We'll put it back in later. Once the shape is pretty much formed, we'll stuff back the filling and pinch down 2 sides to close the wrap. While holding them tightly, we'll roll it back and forth to turn it into a cylinder. Well, Camilla didn't send me a picture, but I feel like this is more or less what it looks like. Now the final step is just to wrap it in aluminum foil and make it look completely like a burrito. Look at this little baby. Like any wrapped meat, it's too big for the pot. We'll let it steam for 45 minutes. After 45 minutes, I feel like it got even heavier. Now we'll unwrap our present and take the plastic off the meat. As usual, don't let any of the liquid in the plastic get on you, because it's kind of gross. You can just tell this is extremely juicy. It's everywhere. I'm surprised it held its shape so well. Let's check in with Camilla real quick. She didn't criticize me too much, so I assume I got it right. Let's cut into it. I'm so excited to see what the middle looks like. I think it actually looks really good. I've never seen anything cooked like this before. Closest being beef Wellington. but I feel like the nature of two dishes are completely different. So here it is, the middle section of the chicken roll. It kind of gives off the vibe of fine dining / prison food, but I'm just overall impressed at how well it's holding its shape. Now let's get some of that juice on there, give it a taste, and rate it 1 through 10. This is so unnecessarily good. Such a good balance between the fattiness of the bacon and the lean protein from the chicken breast. And the ground beef in the middle is explosively flavorful. Onions is a little caramelized, aromatics from the herbs and the spices. Most importantly, that sweetness from the apple really takes it to another level. And a hint of smokiness too, imposed by the bacon. The dish is definitely a solid 9.2. However, I'll never be making it again. Whenever I'm offered liver, I always eat it and enjoy it, in a pate en creux or like a mousse or something. But I just really don't like touching and cooking it because it looks kind of weird. The recipe calls for some chicken liver. It's kind of jiggly, like a blood jelly. You wouldn't believe me, but it actually smells better than my radioactive chicken breast. Ryan's recipe also has a huge amount of bacon, which is always a good sign. So equal part bacon and chicken liver in a blender. I guess the process is pretty similar to a pate. People usually blend liver up with something else before eating it.
Yes.
We just want to keep cooking and stirring it until everything changes color. Maybe I should have put less oil because the bacon is releasing a lot of fat. Once everything's pretty much cooked, we'll season it with 1 squeeze of ketchup and a few dashes of your sister's sauce. Now some cracker crumbs to turn it into real stuffing. Let me know if you like my method. Mixing the cracker crumbs thoroughly, let it soak up some moisture, and we're pretty much ready to serve. Kinda looks like an infection. I didn't really season it that much because the bacon is super salty and we have the sauces too. Alright, time to show Ryan and see what he thinks. He said it's just like his grandma's and thanked me for trying it. What a nice person. Thank you for sharing, Ryan. Now it's time to rate the Delzin family legacy from 1 through 10. Sorry for showing emotion. It's a lot better than I expected. For some reason I was a little put off by the raw liver earlier, but I don't even taste it. It's mostly just bacon, cracker, and seasonings. While I still prefer cornbread stuffing, this is definitely a good alternative. 8 out of 10. Let's cleanse the palate a little bit and try out some desserts. This is the no-bake banana cake recipe from Asha's girlfriend's grandma. All we need to do is to mash up some bananas, sour cream, and sugar. There's no measurement, so I'm just gonna improvise with a whole cup of creme fraiche, half a cup of powdered sugar because I feel like it will melt better, and finally 2 bananas. I don't have clear containers, so I'm just gonna use this glass. As instructed, the bottom will be a layer of salty crackers, and then just pour the cake batter into it. Ideally, it will set overnight and then become like a cake, but I'm having doubts right now, even more when all the crackers started floating up. So this is what it looks like the next day. Seems like it's set. Asha said we need to flip it over, but I'm not gonna do that. Let's just eat it with a spoon. If you guys can't tell, this is not a solid texture. Let's give it a taste and rate it 1 through 10. Obviously, the amount of dairy and sugar in it makes it really good. It's like a really unhealthy but super delicious banana smoothie. Taste-wise, it's definitely a 10 out of 10, but I don't know how to rate it as a cake. Let's ask Asha. So it looks like his version has way more crackers. Maybe that's what holds its shape. Also, he said can't see kiwi, but I don't see kiwi here either. Regardless, it is the best smoothie I've ever had. Let's move on and make a tart. Elaine sent us her aunt's Canadian butter tart. She said they're very Canadian, and I took a look at the recipe and realized the main ingredient here is corn syrup. How is a Canadian dessert without maple syrup? Starting with an egg, half a cup of brown sugar, quarter cup of melted butter. I'm just gonna whisk it together so the egg doesn't get cooked. Half a cup of corn syrup. Looks like we ran out. Perfect. Now I'm gonna make it Canadian with the rest being maple syrup. A splash of vinegar, I'm using rice wine vinegar, and a splash of dessert MSG. Mix together and that's it. I guess if you live in a climate that doesn't grow any fruit for the majority of the year, this would be a pretty handy recipe if you're feeling a tart. I don't have a tart pan, so I'm using these gluten-free pre-made pie shells. A pie is just a big tart, just like how a pizza is just a really big tart. The recipe also called for raisins, aka the evil seeds of Halloween. It's been terrorizing children since 1912. Because of the traumatic memories of Sun-Maid, I'm gonna use golden raisins instead. I'm doing maybe about 20 sprinkled evenly across the bottom. Now we're pouring the filling into the oven at 350 for 10 minutes. It's bubbling up a lot. Still seem really liquidy though. This is what it looks like after 10 minutes. Got a lot more solid, but definitely needs more time to chill. The filling's still kind of bubbling, so don't touch it, it'll hurt really bad. Don't ask me how I found out. After 12 hours of resting, we can send it to Elaine. She's impressed by the size and the raisins she sees, but she doesn't know there's like 40 under there. I'm not cutting from the middle today because I'm afraid that it's not going to hold its shape. It was super runny the day before, but now it's all solidified. It's basically just baked sugar, butter, and syrup, which sounds amazing. So let's give it a taste and rate it 1 through 10. This tart makes me realize that the fundamental truth about dessert lies in sugar, butter, and syrup. Dopamine at its purest form. Forget about the fruits and stuff, it's all for show. Even raisins can taste good covered in all that. This can even be a struggle meal too. Giving it a 9.5. You guys should try this at home. If you've been watching my videos for a while, you know that every time I make flan, it turns out looking like some type of mutated alien feces. So today we're gonna give it another try with this Brazilian strawberry cake recipe from Dot. So the cake batter is similar to that of a typical flan. We got 5 eggs, a key bump of baking powder, 2 cups of sugar, and 1 cup of milk. After we beat everything together with a ligma fork, we'll prepare some strawberries and cut them into dice. Pour everything into the batter and give it a one last mix. And for the clumps of baking powder and sugar floating on top, I'm just pinching them. Sometimes when the ligma fork is not efficient, I have to take the matter into my own hands. Into the oven for 35 minutes. No temperature provided, so I'm assuming it's 350. Looking a little pre-digested. I feel like flan is usually cooked in a double boiler with the lid covered, but this one is just baking in the wild convection. While it's baking, we'll make the Brazilian Brigadeiro. In a pan, we'll combine 3 tablespoons of butter, 7 tablespoons of cocoa powder, and a can of condensed milk. Look how satisfying this is. We'll turn the heat on low and just stir till the butter's melted and everything's combined. There's some starch in cocoa powder, so it will thicken it a lot. We want it to maintain like a sauce texture because we're gonna pour it on the cake. After baking, the cake shrinked a lot. Let's flip it over and top it off with sauce. Why is it moving? Just in case you're wondering, this is not a memory foam pillow, this is a Brazilian strawberry cake. If you're from Brazil, let me know in the comments if you're proud of me. Like any good cake, it's always better to be topped with a thick glaze. So here's the finished product. I'm gonna turn it to show you guys the pretty side. Why is it leaking water? I don't think I'm gonna post this on Instagram because I already know you guys gonna get really mean. But I'll send it back to her to see what she thinks. She also said a lot of nice things later, so thank you. This is actually smelling amazing, and I'm extremely interested in finding out what the texture is gonna be like. Let's give it a taste and rate 1 through 10. Despite its not so pleasing appearance, it tastes really good. A light fruity cake with bouncy texture, paired with a thick chocolate glaze. I think if I ever manage to learn how to make a proper flan, I'll always have it with Brigadeiro. I'll rate this 8.5. You should try it too. Thank you to everybody who sent me their family recipes. It was a lot, but I did read through all of them. It was really nice to get to know you better through the food you grew up with. I think food is the best way to connect with others. I don't get to see my grandparents anymore, but I preserve their recipes really well. I feel like that's a part of life that I'll always share with them. Family traditions and your grandma's cooking is such an important factor of all of our identities. With the holidays coming up, I hope you get to learn more about your home's cooking and connect deeper with the people that care about you. Alright, thank you.